I do that 3 4 times again. I testify to you. I thought I liked you. That's exactly what all the whole world was getting. I'm not. As long as you joking now with me, I got it. Obvious, keep it, do it. I your body. As long as you dreaming about me, ain't no problem. I don't got nobody just like you right now. But the truth, I look better under you. I can't lose when I'm with you. How can I lose and miss the moment? You're just too important. Nobody like you can do. I can't lose when I'm with you. Good morning, blessed and unbothered, almost famous. You're just too important. Nobody like you do. You know. And if I'm to ride with you, I feel like Scarface. Waiting you with the vibe, I'll be your main one. Chances are getting back up to my place. Sex remind you of the violent on new day one. We had shit, yeah. It was magic, yeah. Smashing gravity, yeah. Nasty habits take a hold when you're not here. Ain't a home when you're not here. A throne when you're not here. Don't say it. Almost famous. I dropped the link. How can I lose and miss the moment? You just too boy. Nobody do body like you do. I can't live without with you. How can I lose and miss the moment? You just too boy. Nobody like you do. You know.
Good morning.
Hey, girl, what's up?
Hey.
Jonathan
We're
was
going to finish the book today.
y'all.
I'm excited for this.
I know, and I got distracted. Jonathan was on live. Jonathan from Bad Boys, girl.
Yeah.
I was over there watching. I'm like, let me get up out of here. Trying to come over here and see what was going on. I gotta be trying to see if they dropped.
Didn't I send you the link one day when Relly was on live on TikTok?
I always be on when they be. Well, I don't be following them on TikTok, but on IG and stuff like that.
I don't either. He was just in my For You page or whatever, and I was like, look at him with his belly all out.
He one of my favorites too.
Yeah, flat stomach all out.
Yep. Happy holidays, blessed and unbothered. Happy holidays, almost famous.
Happy holidays.
And whoever in the chat or in the bushes or slide on this replay. We coming to the end of this book. And I'm excited to see how it's about to end.
Yeah, me too. Real excited. Real excited. So, remember Mimi's about to get married.
Yeah.
And she walked on him and the masseuse doing the goose.
Right.
And she was real upset about that, you know. Now she acting different towards him. And she was seen coming out the hotel, the Four Seasons, with Jim. Remember that? By Mama.
Uh-huh.
And so Mama tripping. And they didn't even do nothing, but it looked like it. She all disheveled and got on the same clothes, and Vanessa was like, that's the same outfit she had on last night.
Right.
Hating.
Blessed and unbothered saying she don't think she gonna go through with it. I don't know. She's seeming a bit naive to me, y'all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the She turned out with a T. Not an ED, she turned. But let's see. Oh, and then what about that $20,000 that her mama's boyfriend spent at the vacation?
Yeah, that was crazy too.
That was crazy.
That was real wow. And he just seemed like entitled, like, oops, my bag type of thing too. So
like you said, everything on me. Everybody else was kicking it. Your brother spent $75,000.
That was crazy how he got down and responded to me though. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And what artist is that he told it to keep it hush hush that he was DL on the DL?
Oh yeah, and was acting like he was joking. Someone. His name is SUM WNN is spelled like that. Someone. And yeah, and he was like, yeah, me too. Ha ha ha.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see because he said already a few people knew basically. So it ain't like it was all the way on the hush hush.
Yeah. Yeah, he said everybody already know. And
Mm.
then they said that he did do the interview with Wendy. He did the interview with Wendy, and it ended up being a lot of publicity, and so it worked to their advantage. So now Lamont accepts it.
And that's something that we gonna have to check in to see if it happened something similar happened in real life.
Yep.
Because remember, Wendy had a lot to say back in the days.
Yeah, remember
She
Wendy
was
and
hated by a lot.
Wendy and Puffy were enemies though.
Hmm.
Got her fired and stuff, but we'll get into all that.
Yeah,
Okay, chapter 31. You ready?
we is not on 31.
Chapter 51.
Okay, I'm about to hit mute.
Y'all ready? We gonna run it back real quick. Chapter 51. We're gonna finish the book today though. It's like 40 some pages left, and that's it. Okay, chapter 51 scenario. All the bridesmaids met at Mama's place at 10 o'clock that night. Attendance was mandatory. Imani, Ali C, Kiko, and Jordan were chatting and nibbling on the cheese plate. Vanessa, arriving 15 minutes late, went straight for the wine. Now that everyone was present, Mama took a seat in her chintz armchair and banged a heavy Struben crystal paperweight on the coffee table like a gavel. Meeting is called in order. A hush fell over the living room. They all assumed this was yet another wedding prep meeting. Mama was running a tight ship. Never one to beat around the bush, Mama announced, Mimi Jean is cheating on my son. Imani gasped, no way. As the other women's jaws dropped, Vanessa saying, it's true. Mama hated to agree with Vanessa on anything, but she seconded that statement. Yes, it is true. She told them about seeing Mimi this morning, and then Vanessa supplied her supporting evidence. Annoyed that she had been summoned to be a part of this, Jordan said, "You don't know anything for sure. Maybe she has friends or family staying at the hotel for the wedding." She has no family, Mama insisted. Her only family coming to the wedding is her mother. That swimmer Jerry is banned. She has no other relatives coming for her own wedding, Jordan said. No, Mama replied. Her father is dead and there's no one on his side. In a casual matter of fact tone, she added, after Angela looked after Angela hooked up with Mimi's father, her people called her a ninja lover and never spoke to her again. Ali C, the only white person in the room, was the only one who looked taken aback at this. Jordan continued to come to Mimi's defense. Maybe one of her friends is staying there. She has only a few friends coming, Imani admitted, feeling weepy. How could Mimi do this to Lamont? I should know. We're paying for them all. And she lied to me, Mama said. I called her from the Four Seasons and she said she was still in bed. At the fit that afternoon, watching Mimi spin around in her gorgeous tulle princess gown, Mama had felt a heaviness in her heart. Poor Lamont. She wasn't sure if she should tell him. He was so happy, and the wedding plans were past the point of no return. What to do, she fretted. What to do? Now she put the question to the room at large. So the question on the table is, do we tell Lamont? Iman said, no, it will break his heart. Ali C said, no, the press is locked in. InStyle is covering it for the magazine and the television show. And the InStyle wedding issue with Mimi on the cover is hitting newsstands tomorrow. Absolutely not. Vanessa disagreed. Of course you have to tell him. You have no choice. Jordan said, I'm abstaining. It's none of our business. My children will always be my business, Mama stated firmly, preparing to cast the deciding vote. Really, hers was the only vote. She was pretty sure Lamont had stepped out on Kendra. She was pretty sure he stepped out on everyone he ever dated. That was none of her business. Lamont had never promised those women anything, and that was just his independent streak rearing his head. Marriage, however, was a holy sacrament. Maybe Mimi had gotten her swerve on this with this Gemini person. She had obviously been suffering from a hangover today. Lamont was always on her about drinking too much. She couldn't hold her liquor. Perhaps it was a mistake of youth and an itch that had to be scratched. Lamont had scratched many an itch. Maybe it was karma that she satisfied her own. Mimi had certainly seemed more excited about the wedding today than she had during the previous few weeks. Mama knew she and Lamont were really in love. Lamont was happy and she wanted him to stay that way. What her boy didn't know wouldn't hurt him. She looked around at the girls and handed down her verdict. No, she said. Who did Vanessa think she was, telling Mama she had no choice? We won't tell him. But she would tell Mimi after the honeymoon that such indecisions would not be tolerated in the future. She let this one slide, but from now on, Big Aunt was going to be following her everywhere. Mama banged her makeshift gavel, meeting adjourned. Lamont reclined back in his first class seat at the red eye to New York and smiled. Irv Green had told him that evening that he had the top spot at Augusta all locked up. The announcement would be made next week. Nate was getting everything arranged for the subsequent buyout of Triple Large. Lamont expected to net roughly $90 million. And he was getting married in 10 days. He never thought it would happen. And without a prenuptial, but he had had but he had no reservations, no cold feet. Everything in life felt right. He fell into a deep, peaceful sleep, with the smile still plastered on his face, his stomach as calm as the Caribbean Sea. It was good to be king. And that's the end of chapter 51. Chapter 52. Guess who's back? On the way out of Luke, the Mac threw up the hood of his black velvet cape, a prototype from his clothing line in the works, Macwear. As his primary security man, Tone Sizzle cleared a path to his brand new yellow Hummer H2. Lena was at the wheel, checking messages on her cell. The Mac stopped to sign a few autographs for the club goers milling around on the sidewalk. Tone Sizzle stayed close and then pulled him away when too many people started to assemble. You still need me tonight? Tone asked, opening the passenger door of Daryl's car. No, Daryl said. We're just going home. Okay, I'll pick you up at your house in the afternoon to go to the photo shoot, Tone said and slammed the door. Later, Lena. Lena looked over to respond, but Daryl had already put up the tinted window to keep his fans from gawking. Where you been? Daryl said, looking at the time on the dashboard. It was 2 a.m. You said you was going to be here by midnight. I just got finished, she said, finger brushing her freshly sewn in weave. It took 7 hours, and I left you a bunch of messages. I left my phone at the Hit Factory, Daryl said. We gotta swing by there before we go home to pick it up. Daryl ran his bejeweled hand through Lena's long, straight brown tresses. It looks really good, he said flirtatiously. Feels real good. I'm gonna hate to mess it up tonight. He grinned, then turned up the radio to pump Jay-Z's latest, Change Clothes. Best believe I sweat out weaves, he rapped along. Give Afro puffs like rage, Lena finished the line. She rolled her eyes playfully. That's what you look like when your press and curl shrivels up, she teased as she pulled off. Don't worry about me, baby, Daryl said, smoothing his shoulder-length hair. Snoop Dogg didn't have nothing on the Mac. My stylist will hook it back up tomorrow. He began bouncing on the seat, barely able to contain his gleeful energy. I wish you had been with me tonight, he said. Gambino was there and they played my new single and the whole place went crazy. Shit was off the hook. I'm sorry I missed it, Lena said, but I don't need any club crowd to convince me how tight your shit is. At the red light, she leaned over and kissed him. After years of chasing famous men, who would have ever guessed that Lena would get what she wanted in the form of one, Daryl Cleotis McHenry? When she found out that Daryl had quit Triple Large, she told him he was an idiot, but he proved himself a good friend to her, letting her stay at his place and all. A week after she moved in and demanded that Daryl order a top-of-the-line mattress for his second bedroom, he signed with Hits Inc. as a solo artist, and Country D began to look kind of cute to Lena. Then he let her listen to the album he had recorded, and he started looking downright fine. 2 nights after signing his deal with Hits, they slept together. Daryl made up for his shortcomings by being a very enthusiastic and generous lover. He liked to cuddle. She didn't, but she humored him. But he needed fixing. So she took him on the first rate dermatologist and got his blotchy skin taken care of. She helped him pick out the right jewels at Jacobs. She got some too. She offered to furnish the apartment and he gave her an unlimited budget to do so. They sit on his new furniture, listening to his songs while she cornrowed his hair and oiled his scalp. She pulled out his baby hair and gel it down along his hairline. He liked that. Then she took him to Rod for his press and curl. When this album came out,
What though? The
right?
baby hairs. What?
Yeah, he got his baby hairs laid down. He got a perm now.
I ain't never heard of such a thing on a dude with
I ain't either. He liked that. Wonder if he was getting diddled. Uh, when his album came out, she was right by his side, applauding him louder than anyone. Then moved to a house in Inglewood, New Jersey. She furnished it from scratch and covered the wall with all the platinum plaques of albums that Daryl's had worked on. When he got a platinum plaque for his own album, she hung it right by the front door so everyone would see it first thing as they came in. No surprise, Daddy was furious about her relationship, but it didn't matter. She didn't need Daddy or his money anymore because she had the Mac. And she didn't need any of her old fair weather friends. Fuck Mimi, fuck Vanessa, fuck Alonzo, fuck Kiko, and double fuck that fat fuck Lamont. But in her honest moments, Lena had to admit that she missed Mimi. In her brutally honest moments, she had to admit she missed her something awful. And with Mimi's album doing so well, she couldn't escape her old friend. Mimi's voice was on the radio, her face on MTV. Lena couldn't even do her shopping at the A&P in peace. There she was in the checkout line. Mimi, eat or die. The Globe didn't have to play her like that. But damn, she looked tore up. And since when did Mimi chain smoke and drink coffee nonstop? Lena even went to see the Beauty and the Beast show when it played at Madison Square Garden, taking Daryl's cousin Monique, who was visiting from South Carolina. They sat in the cheap seats. When Monique had complained about it, she begged to go backstage, but Lena didn't want to run into anyone she used to know. Mimi had Lamont and Lena Mimi had Lamont and Lena had the Mac. Lines had been drawn. The camps did not mix, but the Mac gave Lena what she needed. They went everywhere together. He kept her busy, sober, and very happy. She was acting as the creative consultant for his clothing line, Macwear, and he'd taken to calling her his rich bitch. She loved that. Living on the couch, smoking a cigarette, lying on the couch, smoking a cigarette in Studio A of the Hit Factory, Mimi said, "Hey, Jim, when we finish tonight, let's go to Cheddar. It's already 2 in the morning. Cheddar's an afternoon after hour spot." "We're working after hours," Jim said tensely. But Aunt walked in and Mimi sat up in attention on the couch. "Aunt, you know what I really need right now?" He snatched a cigarette, a big no-no per Lamont, and stubbed it out in the ashtray. "Not this," he said. "An apple pie," Mimi said. "An apple pie?" Big Aunt repeated suspiciously because that sounded like it was going to take some physical exertion from him. "Yep," Mimi said. "There's a 24-hour McDonald's on 42nd Street." "Okay," Aunt said, ripping a piece of paper from a nearby pad to take everyone's order. Where's Billy recording?" Mimi asked the engineer. "I think he's in Studio B," the engineer said. "Aunt, don't leave until I come back," she called out as she headed to the door. "Make it quick," Lena told Daryl as she parked. "Make it quick," Lena told Daryl as she parked a few doors down from the entrance to the Hit Factory. But upstairs on the seventh floor, Sheila, the receptionist, had a bone to pick with him before she'd hand over his cell phone. "Just look at this, Daryl," Sheila said. Noting a flicker of disapproval fall over Daryl's face, she corrected herself. "Sorry, the Mac." She pulled up her t-shirt an inch or two and revealed a pus secreting mess around a gold ring in her belly button. "Damn," Daryl said, stepping back. "What the fuck happened to you?" "Your girl told me to go to some guy she knew to get a piercing. Said he was gonna hook me up. It cost $175 and the shit got all infected. And he won't give me my money back." She handed over Daryl's phone. Daryl walked back to the elevator and pressed the down button. "Well, you want to tell her? She's downstairs right now." "I can't leave the desk," Sheila said. "But tell Lena to call me. I'm serious." Just as the elevator arrived, Billy the Kid ran out into the reception area with his gerbil in hand. Country D, he shouted mockingly upon spotting Daryl. Country D. Daryl stepped into the elevator without responding and quickly closed the door in Billy's face. Billy took it all in stride. He quickly headed for the stairs. Mimi walked into the studio B, and saw Big Percy, Billy's cousin slash legal guardian slash bodyguard, dozing off on the couch. Where's Billy? She asked. We're ordering some McDonald's. Big Percy mumbled. He's running around here somewhere. Mimi looked in the lounge, which was empty. Then she went out to the reception area. Have you seen Billy? She asked Sheila. He ran downstairs to chase after Daryl, Sheila said. Will you go get him? Last time he ran out of here, they found him 2 hours later playing laser tag over at Barcode. Sure, Mimi said, and pressed the button for the elevator. Several things happened almost at once. Lena's 5-carat diamond stud, a gift from the Mac, came loose and she bent down, groping for it under the driver's seat. Daryl walked out of the hit factory and headed toward the car. A masked man stuck a sharp object into Daryl's back, demanding, "Give me your ice." All of it, Daryl yelped, and the violent jab in his back answered in the affirmative. Daryl shakingly removed his 5 heavy platinum and diamond crucifixes and dropped them into a black laundry bag that was tossed at his feet. Then he slid off his bejeweled Jacob watch, 2 diamond cuff bracelets, and 4 diamond rings. They dropped into the bag with a clunk. The belt, the masked man demanded. Daryl put the enormous diamond buckle off his leather belt and handed it over. Empty your grill. Daryl popped off his diamond tooth covers, which spelled out the Mac. Shoelaces. Daryl leaned over and pulled the diamond laces out of his Air Force Ones and threw them into the bag. Bag filled with jewels, the jacker was set to make a break for it when Daryl pushed him back and drew his gun. Just then, the kid burst through the front doors of the hit factory, aiming to fling Brownie the gerbil on Daryl's head for old time's sake. He had Brownie cupped in his hands, ready to send him sailing through the air. The kid was laughing. The kid was always laughing, always joking around. But this time, the joke was on him, and it wasn't funny, not in the least. Chapter 53, Let Me Ride. Drive! Lena's freshly retrieved diamond stud fell back under the driver's seat as she threw her hands on the steering wheel and gunned it. What happened? She screamed. She heard one loud popping noise. A gunshot? What happened? She ran 3 red lights before Daryl shouted, "What are you doing? Lights, bitch, lights!" She stopped right in the middle of the block between 58th and 59th Streets. Daryl climbed down from the Hummer and walked around the front. Lena sat there, shaking, too panicked to even cry. He hustled around to Lena's door. In the last year since she'd been driving in the city, he'd been pulled over 12 times. 3 of those times, the cop had found a gun in the car, and he wound up in jail. His license was suspended, which is why, when it was just the 2 of them, Lena always drove. But even in this adrenaline-charged moment, he realized running red lights on 8th Avenue at 2 in the morning in his brand new yellow Hummer with the MAC license plates wasn't the move, and Lena was in no shape to drive. He opened the driver's side door, and Lena scrambled into the passenger seat. What happened? She shrieked. The tears were flowing now. Somebody jacked me for my jewels. She was trembling. And you shot him? No, Daryl said, looking in the side mirror to make sure the coast was clear. He fired on me. He hit the gas. But I think he hit Billy. Billy? Lena screamed. Billy was there? He ran out just as I tried to get away. I think he got shot. Lena started hyperventilating. The Mac, she screamed. She always called him the Mac out of the respect for his newfound success. We have to call the cops. She pulled out her cell. If Daryl had learned one thing from Lamont, it was how to keep cool in pressure situations. He slapped the phone out of her hand. We have to go back, she said, reveling in the drama of it all. The last 6 years of her life had been a dress rehearsal for this star turn. He got Billy. He got Billy. She saw Daryl's gun on the floor of the Hummer underneath her feet. We have to call the police. For what? Daryl said coolly, adding a sarcastic, you think they're going to get my ice back? You were a witness, Lena said. She shakily lit up her cigarette. No, I wasn't, Daryl said pervasively. I didn't see nothing. I came down, got in the car, and we left. We didn't see nothing. We didn't hear nothing. So why would we be going to the cops? And I don't want nobody to know I got jacked. Lena agreed at that point. It would make the Mac look bad. But still, what about Billy? But didn't you see anybody upstairs? Lena asked. Yeah, Sheila, he said. And by the way, that guy you told her to go to for the belly button thing really fucked her shit up. She got a real bone to pick with you. I don't care about that, Lena shouted, then took a hard drag on her cigarette. You think Billy got shot? Maybe you can identify the guy. He out in the mask, Daryl said as he continued to cruise uptown. But you're right about Sheila. She gonna tell the cops I was there. We need to get off the road. We need to figure out what we're gonna do, and we need to dump the gun. Lena eyed him suspiciously as he worked this all out. Nobody's at your father's place, right? He's in LA? Yeah, Lena gasped. Let's go there, he suggested. You got your keys? She nodded. We can dump the gun, get ourselves together, and then call my lawyer. They parked the car in the garage near the Whitaker residence and went upstairs. Daryl showered. Lena chain smoked 8 cigarettes. When he came out of the bathroom, Lena gave him one of the many sweatsuits that were still in her bedroom closet. They were the same size. Look, Daryl said, we'll call my lawyer in a few hours. If they say something about it in the news, that's how we heard about it. By then, the cops will probably be looking to question us. Us? Lena said. I told Sheila you were downstairs in the car. We're in this together, he said pointedly. We ain't gonna say nothing about getting jacked, right? Nobody needs to know about that. So we'll say I came down, jumped in the car, and we left. We didn't see nothing. Lena nodded hesitantly. Maybe we should just get the truth, say the truth, she said, blinking an eye. She took a drag. The truth shall set you free, the Max, she said dramatically. Says who? I don't know, somebody. And you didn't do anything. No, I didn't. Still, I don't want to be involved. But on the real, I need you to be with me on this. He stroked her long hair weave and kissed her. You know I love you, right? You do. He never said that to her before. She'd been waiting to hear those words. Now that he was famous, she was always on alert, fearing he might dump her to get with the T in PYT or something. You my heart, he said. You my rich bitch. So you with me? She looked up at him with tears of joy in her eyes. This was the moment she'd been working toward. She was the Max ride or die bitch. I'm with you, she said. Lamont disembarked from his flight feeling rested with noticeable pep in his step. He checked his cell for messages. There were 48. His step became less peppy. 48 messages in 5 hours? And the hours were between 3 and 8 a.m. New York time? Something was wrong. As he began to listen to the first one, his phone started ringing. Ali C. flashed on the caller ID. He was approaching the escalator that led to the baggage claim when he answered. What's wrong? Where are you? She said breathlessly. At JFK, he said. What's wrong? We just got here, she breathed. Stay at the gate. We're coming for you. He stepped on the escalator. What's wrong? Gate 8. We're coming. Stay at the gate. Allie. He looked down and saw Allie C standing right there at the bottom. Imani and Big Ant were next to her. As he descended, he could see another security guy that was sometimes used. Giant Toby, standing further back and casting a shadow over them all. I already left the gate. What's wrong? He could see Allie C's mouth moving as he heard her voice on the phone. Something happened to Billy. She spotted him, and it looked like she'd seen a ghost. She started rushing down the escalator, up the down escalator. Go back, he heard her voice plead through the phone as she rushed him. Allie C was always dressed in something sleek and black with her blonde hair perfectly straight. He looked at her now in jeans and a Hofstra sweatshirt with no makeup and her frizzy hair sloppily clipped up. If he passed her on the street, he wouldn't have recognized her. He put the phone down at his side. What's wrong? He said to her anguished face. She pushed up against his chest and hissed, go back now. He opened his mouth to say why, but her question was answered at the mob at the bottom of the escalator came into view. What? There was a pack of reporters wielding microphones. The fuck? The cameramen turned on their lights. What's happening? Lamont, the reporters yelled, Lamont! Alice knew there was no going back now. She grabbed his arm in a vice-like grip and close to his ear whispered hoarsely, make no comment. Aunt and Toby swooped him up, practically lifted him off his feet, throwing elbows to clear a passage. Lamont, is it a kiddie rapper war? What do you think? Who do you think did it? Lamont, do you feel responsible? In the pandemonium, he saw a copy of the New York Tribune in the plexiglass glass display on the Hudson newsstand. There was a picture of Billy the Kid. The headline read, Wild Wild West, 54th Street. The Kid, rapper, gunned down outside Midtown recording studio in critical condition. Lamont made no comment. They all piled into the Rose limo and Carlos sped off. What the fuck happened? Lamont screamed. Billy got shot, Ali C said, trying to remain calm. Imani was crying. By who? We don't know, Ali C said. It was outside the hit factory last night. Early this morning, around 2. At 2? What was he doing outside the hit factory at 2? Where the fuck was Percy? Sleeping upstairs, Ali C said as Imani continued crying quietly. So how is he? Lamont said. Let's go to the hospital. Lamont, Alice said gently as Aunt and Toby looked away. He's dead. Where is Mimi? Lamont screamed at the top of his lungs. He knew Mimi had been at the hit factory last night. She's all right, Alice reported. She found Billy downstairs and went with him to the hospital. What? Lamont snapped, his heart and mind racing. She was hysterical, but the doctor gave her something about an hour ago. She's at home, Alice assured him. She's probably asleep now. Nate and Jordan are waiting at your place. Lamont slumped down on the seat. Billy was dead, murdered. This could not be happening. This could not be happening. They all rode the rest of the way in silence. Lamont felt the stabbing pain in the stomach return with a vengeance. Chapter 54. They they reminisce over you. For the funeral, Vanessa wore her black Christian Dior bondage suit with the cutout back. She waved to the crowd amassed outside the Frank E. Campbell Funeral Home on the Upper East Side. She dressed Mimi in a shapeless black dress. Mimi had been sleeping a little with the help of sedatives and crying nonstop when she was awake. Mama was sheathed in a black escada, respectable pumps, and a black hat with the brim so wide that Lamont, seated next to her in the front row in a beautiful black Armani suit, had to lean to the side. Grimy arrived just as the service was starting, with his wife, beautiful, hurrying behind him. He had on an all black custom made ensemble with a small diamond cross over his shirt and tie, black wraparound shades, and a black wool skull cap, even though it was summer. As he swept down the aisle, his long black duster coat billowed behind him. He looked like he'd just escaped from the Matrix. Lena and Daryl, who'd been briefly questioned by the cops and released, didn't show. Irv Green had called Lamont the morning of Lamont's return from LA, shouting, "A child has been killed." The higher ups at HMG were not pleased with the media furor at that building. Irv told Lamont to fix it. The chairman job was in jeopardy. Under the advice of a damage control expert, Lamont had been busy giving interviews to all comers. People were blaming him, pointing out that the kid's first single was called Shoot. Larry King quoted some sample lines. Called you, but your mom said you couldn't come to the phone. Shoot. Want you in the front of my range, but I gotta get my license. Shoot. Thinking about going pro, but I got no hops. Shoot. It was a play on words, Lamont explained on CNN. Obviously. Hip hop didn't kill the kid, Lamont told Fox News. Senseless violence did. Mama had suggested postponing the wedding. It wouldn't look right, and Mimi was in a bad state. Lamont refused. Everything was all set. We're not going to let this murder go unsolved like Biggie and Tupac, Lamont told the newspaper. I'm going to see to it that someone pays. At the funeral, the pastor gave the eulogy and then Grimy got up. He had a third teardrop inked below his left eye. At this rate, his entire face would soon be awash in inky tears. He mumbled a few words and then rapped a somber, haunting song about promise unfulfilled and laughter being silenced. It had everybody sobbing. Even Vanessa was on the verge, but she choked back her tears. So-called waterproof mascara never was. Her her macho husband was crying enough for the both of them anyway. He knew Nasdaq had been following Daryl that night to grab his jewels. After he'd heard what had happened, Alonzo had to contact Nasdaq but couldn't find him. He hoped that this stupid prank hadn't gone awry and gotten Billy killed, but he wasn't going to tell a soul. Blood relation or not, Lamont would go medieval on his ass if he found out he was in any way involved. Lamont was openly weeping, a sight so shocking that it cut through Mimi's sedative-induced haze. When he grabbed her hand and squeezed, she put her arm around him. She resolved to pull herself together. He was obviously as broken up about this as she was, and they had to be strong for each other. In that moment, she realized she truly loved him and she was doing the right thing by committing to him forever. I love you, she whispered in his ear, and he squeezed her hand harder. The caravan of cars followed the horse drawn carriage that carried Billy's casket through Harlem as Billy's fans lined the streets to bid their final farewells, waving posters and chanting the words to his songs. Mimi rode in the rows, velvet curtains drawn, with Lamont, Nate, Martin, the damage control expert, and a photographer who seemed to be working for Martin, the only one who'd been allowed inside the service. Out of his jacket pocket, Lamont pulled a tiny bottle that looked like it would contain eye drops and threw it at Martin. What is this shit? Lamont snapped. It burns. They're glycerin drops, Martin said authoritatively. It's not supposed to burn. I told you only a few drops. Glycerin drops? Mimi said, confused, but they all ignored her to intent on reviewing the digital images on the camera. Well, they worked, Martin said. Yes, Nate concurred, looking at one shot. These are some lovely tears we got going here. But that one makes me look fat, Lamont said. Look at my chins. I could Photoshop it, the photographer said. The next day, Lamont was on the cover of New York Tribune. It was a tight shot of his face, looking stoic and rather sculpted, a solitary tear streaming down his cheek. The headline read, Tears for the Kid. Chapter 55, One More Chance. After waking from my 2-hour afternoon nap, Mimi showered and wrapped herself in the monogram fret robe that Alice had given her for Christmas. As she walked out of the bathroom, she was slapped in the face by a newspaper of some sort. It counts, Lamont shouted. It counts. Dazed, she bent down and picked up the periodical. It was a copy of the Globe. Lamont was sitting on the bed, clutching his stomach. She sat next to him and looked at the cover. The headline read, Princess Mimi got cold feet? She flipped to the story inside and saw pictures and a timeline of her drunken night out with Gemini. At 11:15, there she was. There was a shot of her dancing wildly at foyer with Gemini standing in front of her. At 1:45, there was a shot of her outside the club, eyes rolled back in her head, with Jim clearly trying to hold her up. At 2:01, there was a picture of them heading into the Four Seasons. At 10:35 the next morning, there was a long lens shot of her jumping inside of a cab outside the hotel, looking a full-blown mess. An hour ago, Lamont had come out of his office to find Ali C in front of his door in a yoga pose with Imani standing over her, exhaling, breathe, girl, breathe. They went into his office and Ali C nervously showed him the advanced copy of next week's Globe. What have I done to deserve this? He raged and grabbed his stomach. Nothing, Ali C had reassured him, rubbing one of his shoulders. Nothing at all, Imani had whispered, rubbing the other one. Now sitting on the bed, Mimi sighed. I don't know what you want me to say. Tell me you didn't fuck that smelly motherfucker. I didn't, she said, completely offended. He grabbed the paper and violently ripped it to shreds, letting the scraps fall all over them like gray confetti. It wasn't me, she said, automatically parroting Lamont's favorite line. What are you talking about? There are pictures. My mother saw you there. Your mother? She saw you leaving the Four Seasons and she said you lied to her and told her you were still at home in bed. Imani Jordan, my fucking mother, all of them knew about this. Oh, I didn't realize, Mimi said, feeling betrayed. They were all talking about her behind her back, and no one asked for her side of the story. Lamont looked about ready to go for her throat now that she was hemming and hawing. I was there, Mimi admitted. With these pictures, there was no way she could not deny it. I got drunk and Jim didn't know where I lived to take me home. So we went back to the Four Seasons, but nothing happened. I only lied to Mama because I didn't want to tell her I gotten so fucking drunk that I could get into a whole lot of trouble with the story. I swear, nothing happened. Ask Jim. And you expect me to believe it? What do you think I am, new? Yes, she snapped. I do. I want you to believe that. I don't believe you, he said. Don't fucking lie to me. Tell me the truth. I just did, she said. Lamont curled up on the bed, clutching his stomach. It felt like Freddy Krueger was in there working overtime with the butcher's knife. Stab, stab, stab. How could you do this to me? He moaned. How could you do this to me? He crushed his face against the pillows. I want you to admit it. Then admit what you did with Olga. I didn't do anything with Olga. I didn't do anything with Jim, she said. Everyone is going to see this and think that you did. Not everything in the papers is true. Tabloids especially. You should know that. Lamont buried his face into the pillows. I can't believe this is happening, he groaned. She sat beside him, filled with regrets and questions and conflicting emotions. She felt awful for getting drunk and bringing this embarrassment on Lamont. And she kept replaying that night at the hit factory over and over in her mind. If only she'd gone looking for Billy 5 minutes sooner. She didn't want to think about it. The image of Billy lying out there on the sidewalk, all alone in the dead of night, bleeding, but it was all she could think about. And still, everyone told her that this should be the happiest girl and this is the happiest time of her life. And that made her feel ashamed to admit even to herself that she wasn't. This was everything that she wanted, but not what she wanted at all. They had the wedding rehearsal dinner to get through tonight, but she wasn't sure anymore if she wanted to marry Lamont. She wasn't sure if she wanted to get married to anyone. You know, I had this girlfriend once, Lamont said in a strangled whisper. I dated her for 6 months. And one day I realized she had never said thank you to me. Not for the dinners, the gifts, the vacations we took, nothing. And I was mad at myself more than anything. How did I let all that time go by without even noticing? So I took her out that night to the most expensive place in the city. We had a great meal, and at the end, I said, "Did you forget something?" She said, "No, not a thing. I'm full." And I said, "No, not food. Did you forget anything else? Is there anything you want to say to me?" She just looked at me, a complete fucking blank. I threw some money down and walked out, left her sitting there, and I never spoke to that bitch again. All the stuff she left at my apartment, at my house, I had Imani give to the Salvation Army. He closed his eyes. I'll let all those bitches use me, he moaned. I'll let all those bitches use me. They don't give a fuck about me. No woman ever gave a fuck about me, except my mother. Mimi was not feeling his pain. And don't you use them? What? They want you for money and you want them for their looks. As far as I know, you never dated any average looking girls with great personalities. Just because I like attractive women doesn't mean I'm using them, he shot back. You don't go out with attractive women, she said, pushing it. You don't go out with attractive women, she said, pushing it instead of backing down as usual. You date only gorgeous women, and you expect them to look like that, like they just stepped off the cover of magazines at all times. They're supposed to add to your shine. Maybe they don't give a fuck about you because they know you don't give a fuck about them, not who they really are. Lamont stared at Mimi like he was seeing her for the first time, startled by her disrespectful tone. And you? I never used you, Mimi said. I love you for you. He squeezed his massive body in a tight ball. Then how could you do this to me? I didn't do anything to you. I love you for you. I love you for you. I love you for you. He said, I love you for that. That's your thing. Is it? He said, sitting up. He flicked her ring finger. I don't see you turning down any of the jewelry I give you. She walked into the bathroom and got her engagement ring off the counter. Then she picked up her jewelry box and carried it over to the bed and emptied all the jewelry into his lap. Here you go. Oh, please, Lamont snapped, swatting it all aside. You're just like the rest of them. Every girlfriend I've ever had says, he put on a high, whiny voice, why do you work so much? Turn off your phone. Why can't we just be alone? Why can't we just relax? He huffed. Happy to accept my expensive gifts and be driven around in my cars and sleep on my pretty sheets in my fucking penthouse. You think that shit just falls from the skies? I'm out there from sun up to sundown getting this paper to pay for all of it, and no one appreciates it. No one. Lamont Mimi sighed. Why do you want to marry me? I might not want to now. You want to marry me because I follow orders. I sing the songs that you want me to sing. I say the things you tell me to say. I wear the clothes you have people pick out for me. I have my blonde hair touched up every month, and I got fake tits because that's what you wanted. And whenever you say smile, I cheese it up. And that's part of your imaging, he snorted. And you wanted those tits. I feel like I'm living a false self, she said. False self, he muttered. Where had he heard that before? Someone else had said that. In a flash of recollection, he said, have you been talking to some? Yes, she said, remembering the conversation and how much she related to what he was going through. He told me he was gay. I think you should let him come out. I think you should let him come out. He wasn't supposed to tell anybody. He told me on the down low. Did you call him a faggot? No, yes. He said it was okay. He said it was a term of endearment. As he stammered to spin the story, even for her in the privacy of their home, she looked at him pitifully. I don't know what you said to him, but I think you hurt his feelings. He's very sensitive, you know. What do you mean? Lamont said, feigning ignorance. I I told him it was cool if he was gay, just not to tell anybody. She shook her head and looked at him with those disappointed eyes that made him feel like a kid with his hand caught in a cookie jar. What? He said, shrugging. You know I love gay people. Alt is my boy, and I'm very active in the fight against AIDS. You like Andre because he can do something for you, because he helped get the Vogue cover, and you go to those charity things because they're photo ops. But we both know that if you and Carlos caught a fag alone in a dark alley, watch out. He tossed off an unconvincing not true. And there's nothing you do like more than a pair of lipstick lesbians who are willing to do a tag team on you. That's really sexy, right? But that woman in Ali C's office, a no nonsense empowered lesbian, you call her a dyke. What are you now? He demanded, rubbing his stomach. A gay rights activist? What? Who the fuck cares? But let somebody cough on the ninja, and you're the first one talking about shut them down, boycott. Look, don't try to change the subject. He snapped, wanting to get back to the discussion of her cheating ways. She rolled her eyes as if he wasn't the king of that. We're talking about you, he said. I created a strong image for you, and it worked. I promised you I was gonna make you a star, and I did. What bothers me is that having your picture on the cover of the paper crying fake tears for Billy is part of your image, she said, looking him dead in the eye. Those were real tears. Don't con me, Lamont. I was there, she yelled. I saw you and Martin with those glycerin drops. I only used those for backup. Sitting on the end of the bed, her shoulders fell and she sighed. I will call you a liar, but I really don't think you know the difference between a lie and the truth. And that's what scares me about you. She shook her head. Billy is dead. She managed putting her face in her hands as she tried to choke back the tears. Billy is dead, Lamont. He was 13 years old and now he's gone. You had to give that picture to the paper, but I don't see you shedding tears when there aren't any cameras around. Do you even care? What world are you living in? He raged, slapping her hands down from her face. While you're in here unconscious like sleeping fucking beauty, the national media is trying to crucify me. My new job at Augusta was in jeopardy. When shit goes down, I have to be out there on the front lines. I have to hold it together for everyone. Don't you get that? Crying is a luxury I can't afford. You could cry in front of me, she said, wiping at her own tears. She waited for a reaction but got none. You talk about authenticity being more important than anything, but that's just a good soundbite. You talk the talk, but you can't walk the walk. Everything you do is for show. Everything is for money. A mournful silence. And I don't know if I want to marry someone like that. What are you trying to say? He snapped as if she didn't as if he had she as if she hadn't just been pretty direct. If she thought she was going to dump him, she better think again. That had never happened to him and it never would. You're the cheater here, sweetheart. She was facing away from him, but she shot him a sidelong glance. Did you sleep with Emma? Immediately, irately, no. He'd given her the world on a platinum platter, and now all she could do was point fingers. Was she so blind that she could not see what a great thing she had? He was everything any woman could want and more. She looked up into his blazing eyes. Lamont, why do you do this? She pleaded. I mean, I'm really trying to understand. Why do you lie to me all the time? I know you slept with Emma. Everyone knows. She pointed toward the bathroom, and she almost died right in there. Who said that? Everyone. Everyone who? He wanted specific names so he could deal with them. That is beside the point. The point is, I know you slept with her, and then you insist that you didn't. She came back here one night, he said, sitting bolt upright on the bed. Yes, she overdosed in my bathroom. Yes, we had to revive her. He ran down the counts like he was submitting a plea in court. But I never had sex with her. She passed out before I could. So why didn't you tell me that? It was before I was with you. It didn't concern you. That's not the whole truth, she said, wondering why he could not just come clean. I know you slept with her, and if it was before we got together, then you should just say that. But I don't think it was just one time. You're always trying to hide something. I have nothing to hide, Lamont said, swelling with hubris. He done nothing wrong. So what he lied about fucking why did he lie about fucking Emma? So what? If you give a woman an inch, she take a yard and hang you with it. So what if he been getting the happy ending massage from Olga twice a week for the past 3 years? He'd always pick he'd always said that was his only time to really relax, and that was the truth. Didn't he deserve the small pleasure? And didn't everyone realize by now that oral sex was not sex? It meant nothing. He didn't know Olga's last name and he didn't fucking care. He didn't know how old she was, if she was married, if she had kids, and that's why they got along so well. She showed up on time, did her job very well, and left. And that's what he called a model employee. After Mimi got all upset, Imani had told Olga her services were no longer required. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do anything. He ran this show, but he chose to do it for Mimi because he cared so much about her feelings. And so what that he slept with Kendra a few or more times while Mimi was away on tour, Kendra felt under Kendra fell under the category of been there, done that. Kendra was no threat to their relationship. She was his side piece, and as Mimi was so fond of saying, it didn't count. Do you know I ran into Paola the other night at LA? In LA, Lamont said. She was all over me. I dished her, and she came banging on my door in the middle of the night. And you know what I told her? Mimi looked at him like she didn't really care. I told her, I'm getting married next week, honey. I'm taken. Do you want a round of applause for that? This was the same night you were spreading your legs at the Four Seasons, he pointed out viciously. Ironic, isn't it? He looked at her, cowering at the end of the bed, and expected to hear another denial. But this time she said nothing, and that silence cut him like a knife. He realized he wanted to hear denial. He desperately needed to hear it. He didn't want to believe it was true, but it was. Olga was nobody, and those slip ups with Kendra meant less than nothing. But this thing with Gemini, that was clearly more than sex. How could she do this, he thought. How could she do this to me? She'd embarrassed him in front of his mother, his employees, and now the whole world would know. Had she had unprotected sex with that chump? He hadn't even thought about that. A disgusted shiver ran up his spine, and he was on the verge of heaving. He thought he finally found a sweet, pristine angel, a woman worthy of being his wife. And now he looked at her, and all he saw was another filthy, common whore. How could he marry something like that? He didn't even want to touch her. I have nothing to hide, he repeated, bowels stuck in his throat. You, on the other hand, you get rid of anyone who shows even the slightest sign of disagreeing with you. They disobey and that's it. They're gone, Mimi said. People have to realize their actions have consequences, he said. What happens to me when I don't want to sing the songs you buy for me? I hate almost all the stuff I've recorded for this second album. I hate it, she said. No one respects me as a musician, and I don't blame them. I'm just this wind up doll that sings on cue. People call me a low budget Beyonce. That was one person, Lamont said. One stupid critic. I want to write my own song, she said. You think it's that easy, Lamont sneered? You think every debut artist comes out and gets the heat that you got? I orchestrated every detail and made sure you got the love you deserve. Mainstream love. You just prance through doing all this fun stuff while I'm getting my hands dirty laying the foundation, then doubling back to clean up the messes. I want to do my own work, she said firmly. I want to write my own songs. We'll see about that, he muttered. Will we? And what if I want to dress myself and wear my hair curly? Do I have to ask permission for everything? I don't like that arrangement anymore. Lamont leaned back against the pillows and rubbed his eyes. You want me to be your precious little baby girl, but sooner or later the baby has to grow up. I know, he said. When we were in St. Bart's, you pointed out that woman on the beach and said she's too old and has had too many kids to be wearing that bikini. Do you know how awful you sound when you say shit like that? And then it turned out to be someone you knew, and you went right over to her and acted like her best friend. He sat brooding. What happens when I'm over 30 and I've had kids? You gonna talk about me like that? Stiffly, he said no. Or maybe you're not planning on being with me when I'm 30. Maybe you'll get rid of me and find another 21-year-old, 20-year-old who's willing to listen to everything you say. But when I get married, I plan on staying married. Do you? Feeling wrongfully accused and missing the sweet girl he wanted to marry without a prenuptial, he mumbled, What's happened to you? How much money do I have? She said. What? Lamont said, thinking that every time he was sure this conversation had hit rock bottom, it somehow took another step down. How much money do I have? She repeated. Every time I ask you for an accounting of my finances, you just tell me you're handling it and brush me off. With all these deals you're making for me, am I still broke? You're not broke, Lamont offered vaguely. Well, let me see the paperwork, she said. You got me out here working like a slave. I think at the very least I should know how much money I have. Why? Lamont snapped. Are you going to chip in for our $1 million wedding? Are you going to contribute to our daily expenses? No, he said before she had a chance to answer. You're not. I take care of everything, so you have nothing to worry about. No, I wouldn't contribute to this wedding because you're the one who wants it to be a circus. I would have run away with you one any day or night and got married like Vanessa and Alonzo did. This wedding is not about us, Lamont. It's about everything but us. Fuck. In style. Fuck in style. What was this blasphemy he had heard her speaking? They sat in silence for a while at an impasse. When Mimi got up and put on her some clothes, casual clothes, what are you doing? Lamont said. We have to get dressed for our rehearsal dinner. Are we going? She said, tying her hair back. Of course we're going, he said. Lamont, maybe, she said, then trailed off, coming to the full realization that Lamont was a man who'd always lived his life a certain way, and he probably was not going to change that, not even for her. He grabbed her hand. I forgive you. I forgive the Gemini thing, he said. There's nothing to forgive, she said. Okay, I was going to do something with Olga, he said, but it was only that one time. She wasn't going to back out of this on him. This wedding was going to happen. It had to. What would they tell all the guests? What would they tell Reverend Jackson? And I know nothing happened with Gemini. I believe you. She gave him a long, appraising stare, and suddenly all her regrets and conflicting emotions evaporated. Daryl had always said, "You can't teach an old dog new tricks," and he was right. "But I don't believe you," she said. "I don't want to marry you, Lamont. I'm sorry." Lamont stood there, stunned as she brushed past him and walked out of the bedroom. "Listen to me," he said after a moment. You're talking crazy." But you realized she was gone and he was talking to himself. He came out of the bedroom and saw Mimi slipping on her sneakers by the front door. "Where are you going?" Lamont yelled, hurrying down the stairs. "Listen to me. Come back here." But she didn't listen to him. She scooped up Basil, opened the door, and didn't look back. Chapter 56, Life After Death. Lena's sister, Alexandra, arrived at the Grand Hotel de Cap Ferrat in the south of France in the early afternoon. After settling into her room, she found Mimi and Lena lounging poolside. "Hey, girls," she said. "Bonjour," Mimi said as she sat up in her chaise to give Lena's sister a kiss and a hug. "How was your flight?" "Fine, thank you," Alex said. She was still fully dressed and lugging a large tote bag that bore her initials. "Hi," Lena said as she slathered Bain de Soleil tanning oil on her legs. "It's great to see you too," Alex replied. "And not in handcuffs," she added with a snort of disgust. Lena rolled her eyes underneath her shades. "I brought all the papers and magazines you requested," Alex continued bitterly, dropping the heavy bag with a thud on the floor near Lena's chair. "No need to thank me." "Thanks, Alex," Mimi said, genuinely reaching for the bag. "Did you see Daddy yet?" Lena asked. "No," Alex said. "Where is he?" "I don't know," Lena said, "but he was waiting for you to get here. You should go find him." Alex looked like she wanted to rest in the sun for a while, so Lena added, "Right now." As soon as Alex left, Lena grabbed a few of the newspapers and magazines that Mimi had spread all over the bottom half of her lounge chair. "Oh, God, I need a cigarette for this," Lena said, slipping one out of her pack and lighting up. The day that Mimi walked out on Lamont, she jumped into a cab downstairs. The driver said, "Where to?" and she had no idea. Then she gave him Lena's address. It was the only place Lamont wouldn't think to look. It was the only place she'd feel safe. When Mimi arrived, Henrietta, the housekeeper, was there, and she said Lena had gone to the police station with Mr. Whitaker. Henrietta explained that she had slept at the apartment one night the week before because my corns was killing me. I couldn't make it to the subway, and she had been woken up by what she thought was a burglar breaking in, but had turned out to be Lena and the rapper boyfriend of hers. "I overheard them talking about dumping the gun and getting their story straight," Henrietta said, "talking all kind of foolishness. If Lena had been my girl, I would have knocked some sense into her fast ass a long time ago." And so, even though her corns were aching, Henrietta had followed them down to the incinerator room, and she had fished the gun out of the trash bag before they gone. Then she called Mr. Whitaker in L.A. and told him there was big trouble. By the time Marlon arrived in New York and confronted Lena, she learned that Billy had been killed. She learned that Billy had been killed. It took her 2 minutes and 12 seconds to flip on Daryl. Marlon got her a criminal attorney, and they went to the police station with her full story. The police confirmed that Daryl's gun had fired the shot that killed Billy. When Lena returned to her apartment, she and Mimi had a tearful reunion. Mimi had told her she left Lamont and she didn't know what to do, where to go. So she stayed with Lena that night and they talked all night about whether she was doing the right thing. Lena made the cover of the Tribune the next day, and the story report reported that the cops were looking for the Mac, who was now on the run. The story of Mimi and Lamont's broken engagement had not hit the streets yet, but Marlon saw the maelstrom beginning to gather around both girls. Since Mimi said she was sure she wasn't going through with the wedding, Marlon decided they both needed to get out of town until all the press blew over. They were all on the next flight to Paris. "This is horrible," Mimi said, holding up the copy of Us Weekly Alex had brought. The headline said shattered fairy tale. "This is worse," Lena said, holding up yesterday's Tribune. Daryl's picture was on the cover under the headline, "The Mac. It was an accident." They'd already seen some of the news about Mimi's canceled wedding and Daryl's arrest on CNN, and they had called Jordan and gotten some inside scoop on what was happening from her. But Alex was given the task of bringing over all the past week's press coverage so they could see it for themselves. Lena leaned over and they gaped at the Us Weekly cover. They always got to run the picture torn down the middle shot, she said, shaking her head at the picture of Mimi and Lamont in happier times. "You look good there, though." "When was that?" I don't remember," Mimi said, opening to the story. Sources say Jackson called off the $1 million nuptials after learning that the singer had a fling with Gemini, the super producer behind such hits as. She stopped reading and looked at the picture of Gemini at the top of the page. "That's a damn shame," Lena said. "What did Gemini ever do to anybody?" "And he's so private," Mimi moaned. "He's gonna hate me for putting him in the middle of this." "He'll be annoyed," Lena admitted, "but he won't hate you. She should definitely call him, though, to smooth things over. Or just make a statement saying that it's not true." "Make a statement through who?" Mimi said, still scanning the piece. "Allie C is Lamont's publicist, and I can't use her anymore." "Yeah, well, you'll need to find someone new," Lena said, checking out the Tribune story on her involvement in Daryl's arrest. "My dad is your lawyer now. He'll find you someone new. He'll take care of everything." And wait, listen to this. "Lamont is devastated by this portrayal," says a source close to Jackson. Mimi closed the magazine. "I really want to know who these sources are." "I can tell you," Lena said. "Lamont and Allie C." "You think so?" "Please, Mimi. You've been in the game long enough now to know how it works," Lena said, picking up Us Weekly to skim the article for herself. "And was he so devastated that he had to go on your honeymoon with Kendra?" Jordan had told them that. "I know, I can't believe that," Mimi said, welling up. Over the past week, she's been prone to spontaneous bursts of tears. Lena was ready with the tissue. The tears had become such a regular occurrence. She whipped one out and handed it to Mimi while continuing to read the article. "You dumped him," Lena said, all of a sudden sounding like the sensible one. "I know," Mimi said, sniffling, "but he goes away with Kendra a week later. I mean, he's over me already." "Good. Good that you didn't marry him, if that's the kind of asshole he is," Lena said. Marlon appeared and pulled up a chair. He noticed Mimi was crying again and did not comment. He'd done more parenting in this past week for Lena and Mimi than he'd done in his whole lifetime. He ran his eyes over the screaming tabloid headlines and sighed. He was thinking of taking a vacation after this vacation. "So, Mimi, I spoke to Irv Green," he said, leaning back under the umbrella of a nearby table for some shade, "and he wants to sign you as the first artist on his new label." "He does?" Mimi said, and Lena both said in unison. "Yes," Marlon said. "I told him you didn't like the material you had already recorded for the second album. You had some other ideas. He wants to talk to you when we get back. Maybe you'll have to start over, but he's willing to hear what you have to say. How does that sound?" "It sounds great," Mimi said hesitantly. It made her suspicious that she wasn't going to have to fight with anyone. So far, everything had been a tug of war. How could anything be this simple? "But what about Lamont? He's just going to let me out of my contract?" "Well, Irv is buying out your contract," Marlon said carefully, because he didn't want to trigger more tears. "And Lamont is fine with that." "Lamont is fine with that?" Mimi said, angry, not weepy. "He'll let me go just like that?" Marlon cleared his throat. "You let him go," Marlon noted. "Am I correct?" Lena had another Kleenex ready just in case. Mimi nodded yes, she said quietly. "You know how he is," Lena said. "When something's over, it's over." "This is the best situation for everyone," Marlon said. "Yeah," Lena said, wholeheartedly agreeing with her father for the first time in over a decade. "You'll see." The pool waiter came by and asked if they needed anything. "Banana daiquiri," Lena said. As Marlon picked up one of the papers, she added, "A virgin banana daiquiri." "Same for me," Mimi said. "I'll take one too," Marlon said, skimming the story about Lena's former boyfriend who had accidentally shot and killed this poor 13-year-old boy. but I want alcohol in mine, and please make it a double. Lena leaned over to grab Star magazine, and his eyes fixed on the small of her back. Marlena, is that a tattoo? Oh my goodness, he moaned, squinting hard. What does that say? C-R-A. Chapter 57. I used to love her. With Lamont in the back seat, Carlos drove through a pair of wrought iron gates and eased the new Range Rover up the long tree-lined driveway. The 20,000 square foot castle in the leafy New York suburb of Bedford was a home befitting Lamont's new status as the chairman of Augusta Music. He recently purchased it after receiving $95 million for the sale of Triple Large Entertainment. The TLE office was closed down. All of the TLE artists, except Mimi, were re-signed directly to the Augusta's Black Music Division, and Lamont's first official act as chairman was to fire hundreds of Augusta employees. Carlos parked by the side entrance. Before heading inside, Lamont grabbed the envelope that had arrived in his office this afternoon. He walked through the kitchen where his personal chef was preparing dinner and dashed upstairs to the master bedroom suite, passing the butler and one of the three full-time maids on the way, speaking to no one. Hi, honey, Kendra chirped as soon as he set foot in the bedroom. Hey, he kissed her on the cheek and pulled his tie loose. Kendra could be smothering, especially now that they were living together, but she had proved her loyalty. When they gone to Hawaii after the canceled wedding, he chewed her ear off about the disloyal bitch Mimi had been. Kendra had never complained. On the last day of the trip, he had apologized for going on endlessly about it and for all the times he had hurt her in the past. He had told her that he had never appreciated her the way he should have and sworn that was going to change. Her eyes had lit up and she had smiled bigger than he'd ever seen. How was your day, babykins? Kendra inquired as Lamont undressed. Wonderful, he said. Busy, and yours? Very busy. I went to the gym and Kendra went into details about her leisurely day, and Lamont tuned her out. It had become their nightly routine. Kendra had given up on her acting career. Being Lamont's living girlfriend was a full time job. Days were spent beautifying herself, keeping Mama company, and managing the large staff required to ensure things at the mansion ran smoothly. Nights were spent attending industry functions with Lamont and satisfying him sexually, sometimes with the help of one or two of her beautiful, disease free friends. Great, Lamont said curtly, which was a signal for was a signal to her that she should shut up. He looked at the envelope he had brought home from the office. It contained a copy of Mimi's new CD, which was coming out soon on Irv's label, Green Music. He was anxious to listen to it, but he needed some privacy. Olga is waiting for you downstairs in the spa room, Kendra said, and handed him his silk robe. Lamont headed downstairs, smiling. He'd forgotten Olga would be there today. Kendra had recently surprised him by rehiring Olga back, even though Kendra had always known about the happy endings, and that was why Kendra was the best girlfriend in the world. While Olga needed his back, Lamont got a chance to listen to Mimi's new album. The first song was called "Listen to Me," and it sounded pretty good. The second, "On the Inside," was even better. It was just his kind of music. The third song was called "Nothing Is Something," and he didn't care for the lyrics. After the fourth song, "Do As I Say," he felt he heard enough. On the floor, he noticed a slip of paper had fallen out of the envelope. It was a note from Irv, and he squinted to see the words scribbled on it. Business, never personal, it read. He had Olga change the disc. He wished Mimi well, but would this record sell almost 2 million copies as his had done? Probably not. As new age music filled the room, he tried to put Mimi out of his mind for good. Turn over, Olga said, and he did. Chapter 58, Ladies First. As the nominees for Album of the Year were announced, Mimi squeezed Jim's hand. When they got to her name, Jim squeezed back. Jim had been her sole producer and co-songwriter on her sophomore album, Listen to Me. She spent 6 months at the Funk Shack recording songs with him, and in that time, a romance had blossomed. She was living in LA now, and he was still in Georgia, but somehow between her hectic schedule and the distance between them, they had been able to make the relationship work. She had been up for 3 Grammy awards and already she lost 2. So when the envelope for Album of the Year was opened and a name was called, Mimi began to clap and smile as she had done for every other award. But then Jim was looking at her. He was smiling. Everyone was looking at her. Everyone was smiling. She saw Irv jump up in the front row, clapping very hard with his hands almost over her head. Jim pulled her to her feet, hugged her, and said, "Go." He stepped out of the row so she could get to the aisle. And only then did she realize that they were clapping for her. She managed to walk up the stage, hugging Irv on the way up, but she couldn't hear anything. It sounded like waves crashing against rocks. All she could see was a white light. It really did feel like going to heaven. Afterward, she couldn't remember what she had said, but she knew she'd at least managed to thank Jim and Irv. Backstage, Deb, the publicist for Green Music, was waiting. She ushered Mimi through a ton of interviews, and Mimi couldn't remember a single thing that she had said in those either. By the time she hooked up with Jim again to go to Irv's annual Grammy after party, it felt like weeks had passed. Though Mimi was physically and emotionally exhausted, she worked the room with Irv because this was his moment to shine as much as hers. He'd given her free reign to do what she wanted on the album, and his team had done a stellar job in helping her transition her image from ghetto fab hip hop princess to alternative soul singer songwriter. He was so happy. He looked like he was floating around the room. "I guess old Irv still got it," he crowed, with his arm around Mimi's shoulder. It seemed like the photographer's flashbulbs never stopped. When Lamont showed up, Irv went over to speak to him, and Mimi went back to her table with Jim. She hadn't seen or spoken to Lamont since the day she run out of his apartment, and this was not the place for that to happen the first time. As far as she was concerned, it didn't need to happen at all. But as she left, she stopped in the ladies' room, and as she came out, she ran right into Lamont, who was heading into the men's room. "Hey," he said warmly. He pecked her on the cheek as if she were a friend he hadn't seen in a while, not his former fiance who walked out on them 2 days before their $1 million wedding. "Hello," she said, standing awkwardly in the dark corner of the restaurant. "Congratulations," Lamont said. "You deserve it. I thought you should have gotten best song too." "Thank you. Hopefully, by your third joint, you'll have somebody new to write about," he said, making a playful jibe about her autobiographical lyrics. She laughed, and just then the photographer popped around the corner, and yet another flashbulb exploded before she and Lamont both hurried away in separate directions. That single picture of them together earned the lucky photographer $150,000. It ran on the party pages of Vibe, Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, US Weekly, People, and New York Magazine. Mimi looked stunned, her long brown curls hanging loose, her shoulders bare in her strapless Zac Posen dress, her makeup flawless, an inviting half smile on her face. Lamont, however, got caught out there. He was squinting at her, his mostly obscured face in profile, and the unflattering angle gave the whole world a perfect view of his triple large chin. Okay, epilogue, and it's called outro. Daryl went to jail for aggravated manslaughter after admitting that he accidentally shot Billy. Despite all his arrests for gun possession, he had never fired a gun in his life until that night. He is currently holding daily rap seminars at Sing Sing Correctional Facility and planning to release a hip hop gospel album called Praising upon his release. But he will have to find a new record label because Hits Inc., despite his name and a hardcore reputation, dropped him following his conviction. Lamont, making hits at Augusta and still living with Kendra with no plans to marry, finally got his chance to be in Vanity Fair. They called him to get secondary quotes for their expose on Daryl's meteoric rise and fall. Vanessa divorced Alonzo. She got a hefty alimony payments. He got custody of Pedro, and she moved to LA, where she hooked up with Margot Prescott, an outspoken, openly gay, middle-aged, but well-preserved white actress who was starring in her own reality television show. With filming on the second season of the cult hit just beginning, Vanessa is determined to get a lot of airtime. Imani had always harbored an obsessive crush on her boss, but knew she didn't stand a chance with him since she wasn't a model. B, she wasn't a light skinned girl with long hair and longer legs who looked like a model. And C, she wasn't white. But then she got the next best thing, his brother. She consoled Alonzo after Vanessa abruptly dumped him and they started dating. And she realized this was a much better thing than being with Lamont because Alonzo was gorgeous and sweet and faithful. Mama developed a line of very real looking wigs and add on hair pieces and hawked Mama Jack's custom hair on QVC. When Lamont was informed that Black Enterprise was planning to do a one-page story on his mother, he shook them down for it too. Mama, who had known to date in years, fell madly in love with the widower who she met through her church. Lamont didn't trust the guy. At Mama's birthday dinner, he pulled the 69-year-old, mild mannered, retired pediatrician aside and told him to watch his back. Jordan, now an editor in chief of Sister Girl, indefinitely put off her wedding to Nate after reading a feminist manifesto called Here Comes the Bride that convinced her that marriage was an antiquated institution that enslaved women. But she agreed to let Nate impregnate her because she didn't want to become one of those 40-year-old career women who found out too late that their eggs were all dried up or defective. Lena relocated to LA and gave up hard partying to focus on her career. Marla gave her some startup capital and found additional investors for her business venture, a line of tees and athletic apparel called Wit. Lena's sister, Alexandra, helped with the business plan, and Mary Elises Gonzalez was named designer director. First year sales projections are $2 million. Mustafa followed Vanessa to LA and lived in Margot Prescott's guest bungalow, Kato Kalin style. He's a consultant for Lena's clothing line. Lamont signed Emma White to Augusta, saying she would be the next Faith Hill, except her voice didn't even come close. Though completely devoid of musical talent, everyone at the label loved Emma because she hustled like a pro during promotional appearances. She came ready made with corporate affiliations, and she looked amazing in her videos. Witchy, now the senior vice president of black music at Augusta, got engaged to Teresa Dearborn, though T in PYT. Though the group was hugely successful, his family said they never heard of her and refused to meet their future daughter-in-law, who they privately referred to as the colored girl. Then Teresa dumped him for cheating on her with none other than Emma White. The Mann family was overjoyed when Witchy disentangled himself from sweet, talented, clean living Teresa and moved in with Emma, a vapid former junkie who did not even have a GED. Ali C married a nice Jewish dentist from Great Neck, whose last name happened to be Cornbluth, so she could continue to go by the nickname Ali C. Someone came out on the Wendy Williams show. Lamont was furious, but once he saw a spike in sales, he's pimped someone out to the media, touting him as hip hop's first homo thug. Some became a gay icon and was named one of People's 50 Most Beautiful. Lamont was named Man of the Year by GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. Grimy converted to Islam, as Beautiful had been encouraging him to do for years. Brother X, as he now calls himself, shuns drugs, cigarettes, alcohol, and pork, and he does not use cuss words in his rhymes, a decision Lamont is trying to get him to reconsider. Beautiful keeps herself covered at all times. Don Gambino and Envy became the proud unmarried parents of a baby girl. Their daughter has bright blue eyes, white blonde hair, and skin paler than Casper the Friendly Ghost. Ebony Jones is her name. Super Fat E and his wife Renee also has a visit from the stork. Triplets, thanks to the fertility drugs. Fat E gained 60 pounds in sympathy weight during the pregnancy, but the happy couple worked out together afterward, and he has lost almost 100. Flosses unimaginatively titled fourth album, Flossin' tanked, but Eugene was making enough in film, 6 million per, that didn't sweat it. He and his sexy co-star Lisa Richards are currently Hollywood's black it couple. Ridiculous was diagnosed with dyslexia and saw a therapist who helped him manage his disability. Lamont promptly got a deal with Scholastic to put out a line of educational rap CDs. Dickey is currently on a world tour promoting literacy and his first educational rap along CD, Ridiculous Rhymin', accompanied by a band of groupies known as the Silly Hoes. A newcomer to Augusta music, Nasdaq, finally has an album, Bull Market, scheduled for release next year. Daryl's ice jacking is a secret he and Alonzo swore to keep to themselves. Crazy G's debut album, Mayhem, fizzled. He is living in Miami with his round the way girl, the one he always kept on the side while he ran through every hip hop and R&B chick in the industry. Bradley Brown III left Anne Prisan Brown for his longtime mistress, who dressed like a stripper and knew how to drop it like it was hot. Anne got half and the kids. She is seeing a therapist 4 times a week. Rayshawn Atkins broke his leg in a car accident and had to sit out an entire NBA season. He spends all his free time in the lab working on his debut rap CD. Lamont will not take his calls. Jerry Morelli ran out on Angela after stealing the car Mimi had bought her. Angela is now the president of Mimi's fan club and happily spends her weekends mailing off Mimi's signed headshots to her daughter's devoted fans. Keisha is a stay at home mother to her 2 kids in Toledo, and she still believes that one day her fiance is going to quit dealing drugs of his own volition. Toya moved to LA, where she opened her own hair salon, which Mimi financed. Mimi and Lena threw her a star-studded opening party, and it has does a booming business. Mimi is happy with her personal life. Her long distance romance with Jim continues to bloom, and her career has never been better. The Grammy win bolstered sales of Listen to Me. It did quadruple large numbers. Sold 6 million albums and counting. Bling. Okay, the last little part is called shout outs. And it's from Kim. It's like a page and a half. I'm gonna read it. Shout outs. Ira Silverberg, my fabulous agent, for schooling me on everything from first serial to world fights, being available to me 24/7, 365, alerting me to sample sales and watching my back end. You're the shit. Tad Florides for discovering me and being oh so cool, as well as Anna, Neil, and everyone at my agency, Donato and Olsen. Hillary Bass, Kathy Schneider, Kristen Powers, and the whole Miramax gang for being open to my endless list of ideas and giving so much time and attention to this project, and especially Jonathan Burnham for having so much faith in me. Love you, sweetie. And so she just goes through and thanks everyone that helps her. I don't want to read all of this because it's just kind of personal. Here's Kimora. Kimora Lee Simmons for 10 years of jokes, for being the ultimate diva, go girl, go. And most of all, for giving me the smartest, sweetest, most beautiful god baby I could ever dream of in Ming Lee, and a bonus sweetie in Aoki Lee. Love you, mama. To Mogul slash Yogi Simmons for scoffing at my dreams of bestsellerdom, thereby motivating me to prove you wrong. Now get off my dick, ninja. Oh snap! Mm. So that was to Russell right there. Let me repeat it again. It says to Mogul slash Yogi Simmons for scoffing at my dreams at bestsellerdom, therefore motivating me to prove you wrong. Now get off my dick, ninja. That's what she said to Uncle Russ.
Mm-mm-mm.
To Tommy Hilfiger for being the best boss in the world and for always looking out. And to my family, to Big Papa for teaching me many lessons, including the greatest of all: never count on anyone but yourself. And to all the haters, I still got love for you. Just kidding. I don't. That's it.
Okay, well, some people had to leave so we could pick up tomorrow with our discussion and on what everybody think. But I
Mhm.
ain't gonna lie, from reading some of the reviews and stuff, even though it was off the chain, I thought it was gonna be a little worse.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be a little worse too. I thought it was gonna, yeah. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't,
I
yeah, it wasn't that bad. It kind of put
mean,
them
they
in the,
was off the chain doing some stuff,
yeah,
and
but
like
it
the
didn't put them in that bad of a light. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, yep, exactly, exactly,
hmm
yep. But thanks again for everybody that pulled up, and I shared Almost Famous link and I shared it on my community board as well. If you ain't subscribed, go ahead and tap into Almost Famous. And we're also both on TikTok. And if you aren't subscribed to my main channel, subscribe to that as well, y'all.
and it
Thank
was real fun reading this book with everybody.
Yep, I had fun. I enjoyed it though. I
I
enjoyed
did too. It
I
was real
can't wait
fun.
till we gonna pull back up tomorrow morning with our coffee to talk about it and what everybody think.
Yeah.
So if you been following along and if you come catch this replay today, tap back in with us tomorrow morning.
And Carmen, if you want to start like a book club, we can have a book club. We meet up once a week. Everybody get a book, like the same book. We can do something like that. Definitely.
Yep, comment if you're interested, okay?
All
All right.
right.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks
Peace.
again, everybody. Thanks again, Almost Famous.
You're welcome. Talk
All
to you
right.
later.
Talk to y'all soon. Bye bye.